Here's the question, though, I wanted to bring into the discussion. I think is worth mentioning because we were talking about dealing with issues at doorways. We've been talking entirely from the perspective of bad guys trying to break in. Okay, so when is it appropriate to deal with bad guy? What if it's not a bad guy, Jacob? What if it's law enforcement?
The firefighter?
I'm going to use the law enforcement as an example, though, because it's probably a little bit more, certainly is more controversial. But and we see lots, we see a fair number of these kinds of incidents that have happened over the years, and that is either you've got, for some reason, law enforcement is showing up at your house, and they may have a justified reason to do so, or it could be that they're supposed to be serving a warrant somewhere else, and they got their information wrong. The point is it happens. So let's just imagine dudes are at your door. They're banging on that door. They're basically trying to force their way in, and they may very well be doing that in the case of certain certain warrants being served, particularly no knock warrants. What I know for you is that things will not go well regardless of if you have justification or not. Okay, and to be clear, there have been bad guys that have tried to gain entry into homes pretending they're law enforcement. That is also documented. So like this is a legit concern, right? So point is, you got somebody at the door, they're trying to force their way in, and they're calling out police, police. Okay,
Legitimate or not.
so how do you deal with that? That's the question I'm posing.
Verbality, I think, becomes pretty important. Like this idea of communication. Communication becomes really important. Police, police. If someone's shouting police, police, I'm sort of like, no, you're not. Back off. I'm armed. Like those might be things I'm calling, or I might say, I might, if I got someone, this is one of the reasons why rolling 911 becomes really important early. Because, if my wife's on the phone with dispatch and they're saying they're cops, like that gets really interesting really fast. Well, dispatch like, are we serving a no knock warrant over there in this neighborhood? We have seen situations where homeowners have shot cops and been justified in doing so. But them calling out commands certainly limits your options because it's supposed to communicate. So those are all things that I think are generally, that you're looking for, trying to determine, is this a valid law enforcement response or not? I think another thing you can consider is that I don't have to confront this person at the door. If someone's yelling police and knocking on the door and all this stuff, like I can retreat into the house. I can find a safe room. I can, give myself more opportunity for communication, and things like that. Certainly, though, all those tactics would just become more important. More distance, more cover, more communication.
What I could tell you is that where homeowners get themselves unalived at the doorway is when they end up meeting law enforcement at the doorway and they have a gun in hand. And so now these situations may be difficult, they may be sticky, but what I can tell you from what I just said is that the thing you don't want to do if faced with what you think is a law enforcement presence at your door is meet them at the door with gun in hand.
Yeah, that's never gone well.
Because as soon as they, understand it, like if justified or not, like if they're coming in, they're coming in. Okay. But if they're coming in, as soon as that door comes open and they see person and a weapon in hand, almost always that's going to go very badly for you. Right. So in other words, like what you just said, Jacob, and what we just talked a moment ago about the tactical side of this, of the further you can be from the doorway, okay, in other words, creating space, the better, buying time. If you can use cover, all the better. Okay. So I would give it some thought of if this is a situation you've found yourself faced with. If it came to, meeting them at the door versus forcing them to force their way in, I would probably choose allow them to come in and do their thing while I'm trying to maintain distance with cover involved, or maybe I can have a weapon close at hand in case this is not a law enforcement officer I'm dealing with. But yet the first thing they see when they come in is not me with gun in hand. So just give that some thought, like how you might deal with that kind of thing. Because again, the picture you don't want to have, like the first view, and I've seen these body cam footages before too, where door is opened, they come in, and you just see a person gun in hand. Like that, just you're gonna get mowed over. That's all I can say. So
So, I would be frosting those windows, man. I would be, thinking about how, like you said, how do I mitigate the risk of,
yeah.
being seen with the gun?
And again, it's not about whether law enforcement's in the right or wrong with this.
Nah.
This is about keeping you alive, so that you can fight. Again, you can fight a courtroom battle another day, but you can't get your life back if you make poor tactical decisions in these kinds of situations. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because I think it is a important thing to remind people about as we're thinking about, hey, how are we dealing with defense at the doorway? Sometimes that means law enforcement might be involved, and so yeah, give it some thought.